In this video, we are going to discuss about the process of biotechnology. First of all, let us see what is biotechnology. Technology that is derived from living things and their natural processes. That is the definition of biotechnology. And the main application areas are medical biotechnology, which includes the production of vaccines, diagnostics and pharmaceuticals. Industrial biotechnology, it includes enzymes and microorganisms for processing products. Environmental biotechnology, it's about microorganism for bioremediation. And agriculture biotechnology, which involves enhanced crops, feed and fertilizers. Now, principles of biotechnology. So there are two main principles of biotechnology. One is of course genetic engineering, and second is the maintenance of sterile environment. So in genetic engineering is basically the direct manipulation of the genome, which can be a DNA or RNA of an organism. It involves the transfer of new genes to improve the function or trait into the host organism and thus change the phenotype of the host organism. So a foreign gene is inserted into the host to bring about a change in the phenotype, a desired change in the phenotype. That is genetic engineering. Another very important aspect of genetic engineering is the maintenance of sterile conditions, so that it enables the growth of only the desired microbe for manufacture of different products like antibiotics, vaccines, enzymes, etc. So sterile condition is a very important, because all these things, antibiotics, vaccines, enzymes, this should be produced in the purest form, and any type of contamination will be very harmful for humans if they are using this. So sterile condition, maintenance of sterile condition is a topmost priority in case of biotechnology. So these are the two main principles of biotechnology. Now let's see the first example of a recombinant DNA. So these two scientists, that is Stanley Cohen and Herbert Boyer, in 1972 they isolated a antibiotic resistant gene by cutting out a piece of DNA from the plasmid of Salmonella typhimurium. So this was the experiment that they did. Okay, so this was the plasmid, and this plasmid was cut out and a foreign gene was inserted in the plasmid, and it was then inserted inside the host bacteria, so that as the bacteria multiplied, this plasmid, this recombinant DNA, that is the plasmid plus the foreign DNA, also multiplied with this bacteria. Now we come to the main steps in the process of recombinant DNA technology. First is isolation of DNA. Second is the fragmentation of DNA by restriction endonuclease. Then this fragmented DNA are isolated, generally by the use of electrophoresis. Then the desired DNA is ligated or joined to the vector DNA. Then this DNA, this recombinant DNA that is formed, it will now be transformed into the host, and then we will culture the host cells at a large scale and then extract the desired product. So these are the main process of recombinant DNA technology. Okay, now let us come to the first step, isolation of DNA. So this is the process of isolation that we do in our lab, in our experiments, where the cell is broken down using detergent, and then protease and RNAs are used to destroy the protein and RNA, and then it is centrifuged. The DNA containing supernatant can be separated out, and then we pour alcohol, that is ethanol, chilled ethanol, so that this separates out, the DNA separates out, and we can remove this with the help of a glass rod. This process is known as spooling, the spooling of DNA. Okay, almost similar process is followed in case of industrial scale also. Here the different types of macromolecules are broken down by the use of different enzymes. For example, if it is a bacterial cell, the DNA is isolated by using lysozyme. In case of plant cells, cellulase is used. In case of fungal cell, chitinase is used. And then the DNA is separated by pouring of the chilled ethanol by spooling. RNA and proteins are of course removed by the ribonuclease and the protease. Okay, so finally, as we after the all these enzymes have broken down all the different parts of the cells, only the DNA is remaining. So after that the DNA is separated by using chilled ethanol. So that is the first step, isolation of DNA. Next is cutting the DNA, and that will be done by restriction endonucleases. So endonucleases are enzymes that that cut the DNA at specific sites. As you can see here, there are two types of nucleases. Nucleases are enzymes that cut DNA. Now exonuclease generally cut the DNA at the ends, while endonuclease, it cuts the DNA at the specific positions, specific sites, which are known as recognition sites of the endonuclease. So in case of biotechnology, we need endonucleases because we don't want to cut the sides, the ends of the DNA. We want to make cuts at the middle, at specific sites of the DNA, and therefore we use endonuclease. So these are the different types of endonucleases, as you can see here, and these are how the cut is made. So in case of the first two, you can see, for example, HAM3, you can see here the cut is exactly in the middle of the gene. If this is the recognition sequence, so it cuts exactly at the middle of the recognition sequence. So this type of cut produces what we called as blunt ends. And if we take this example of EcoR1, here the cut is towards the side, here one cut and here one cut, so that two overhanging parts are produced, and this type of ends are known as sticky ends. These are the sticky ends. Now one thing that you should all know that this endonucleases, they cut the DNA only at specific sites, and this specific site can be of 4 or 6 bases, and these are known as recognition sequences. So for example, in case of HAM3, these 4 bases are the recognition sequences, and it cuts at the middle of these 4 bases. While in case of EcoR1, these 6 bases are recognition sequence, and it cuts at one side of this recognition sequence, not at the middle. So this produces blunt ends, and this produces sticky ends. Okay, now you can see here how this sticky ends are produced here. So mostly in case of restriction, mostly in case of biotechnology, generally we use such type of endonucleases which produces sticky ends. And if we use the same endonuclease to cut both the vector DNA and the foreign DNA, then complementary sticky ends are produced, which can be joined easily by using DNA ligase. Okay, so each restriction endonucleases recognize a palindromic nucleotide. So if you check out the other slide also, if you see here, all these recognition sequences are palindromic. All these are palindromic. That means if you read from this side and if you read from this side, this will be same. So all those recognition sequences are palindromic sequence. It can be of 4 or 6 bases, and the endonuclease will cut either at the middle of the recognition sequence or towards the sides, producing either blunt ends or sticky ends. Now how do we name the endonucleases? So this is how the endonucleases are named. So for example, EcoR1. So E represents the genus Escherichia, Co represents the species Coli, R represents the strain, that is RY13 is the name of the strain, and 1 is represent the first enzyme isolated. That means after that, this is the first enzyme. If another enzyme is isolated from this strain, then it will be EcoR2. So similarly, this is how the endonucleases are named. So these endonucleases will cut the DNA into smaller pieces. Now what we want to do, we have to isolate these pieces of DNA. And how do we isolate it? We isolate it with gel electrophoresis. So this is a typical gel electrophoresis where there is a gel and it is connected to two electrodes. As you can see, there is a negative electrode and the positive electrode. Now DNA being negatively charged, it will move towards the positive electrode. So there are some wells near the negative electrode, as you can see here. These wells are filled up with the solution of DNA that has the fragments, all the fragments of DNA. This is filled out with the help of a micropipette. Then after this, electricity is passed through this. As the electricity passes through this gel, this DNA fragments, as these are negatively charged, this will move towards the positively charged electrodes. As you can see here, these are the DNA fragments that are moving through the gel. Now these fragments will separate out. As you can see here, this has separated out on the gel based on their densities or based on their length. So if it is smaller, then it will travel further. If it is longer, it will travel less. So accordingly, this will separate out in the gel. And if you want to see this, then you can use this stain, ethidium bromide stain, to observe the DNA. The DNA can be observed in the gel with the help of this stain, ethidium bromide. Now we have to separate the DNA from this gel. That is done through the process of elution. Okay, so here this gel is cut out and this is put in a, you can see, a elution chamber, and in this elution chamber you can separate the DNA from the other parts of the gel. So this is the process by which the required DNA is separated. Now this DNA can be in very smaller amounts, so we need to amplify it. We need multiple copies. For that, the process used is PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. Now let us see how a particular gene or particular DNA is amplified. So first step is called denaturation. This is the step 1. This is the foreign DNA that has to be amplified. That means we have to make many copies of this gene. So first of all, we will separate these two strands of DNA, and we do it with the help of temperature. So about 95 degrees temperature, if you give that temperature, these two strands of DNA will separate. That process is known as denaturation. Now second step, annealing. So what is done in annealing? A primer is added at the 3' end of both the strand, this and this. A primer is added because the new strand will be formed by the enzyme DNA polymerase, and as you have studied in DNA replication, the DNA polymerase cannot start forming a new strand without the help of primer. So we need the primer. So here this primer will be added at the 3' end of both the strands. So this process is known as annealing, and this takes place at about 55 degrees centigrade. Next is the synthesis of the new strand of DNA, or what we can call as extension. So here, with the help of this DNA polymerase, which is known as the Taq polymerase, a new strand of DNA will be formed using the nucleotides. Okay, these are the nucleotides. So nucleotides, this will be used for making the new strand like this. You can see this new strand is formed. Now this new strand is formed by the use of this polymerase, which is the Taq polymerase. Now this Taq polymerase, why is it called Taq? Because here T stands for thermus and AQ stands for aquaticus. So thermus aquaticus is a bacteria, and this polymerase, this DNA polymerase, is obtained from that bacteria. Now that bacteria is a thermoacidophile, and therefore it survives at very high temperature. So the enzyme that is present in its body also functions at a very high temperature. So because this extension, it proceeds at a very high temperature, that is 72 degree, which is way high temperature than our body temperature. So the DNA polymerase that is present in our body cannot be used, or any other organisms cannot be used for this process. So that is why we use this DNA polymerase, Taq polymerase, because it can function at very high temperature. So with the help of the DNA polymerase, the new strand will be formed, and if we repeat this about 30 times, then we can get about 1 billion copies of this gene. So by this polymerase chain reaction, you can use it for making many million, 1 million copy. Only in 30 cycles you get 1 million copies of the required gene. Now we have got the foreign gene. Now what we need the vector in which we will attach that foreign gene and then put it into the host. So what are the vectors? So mostly in case of bacteria, if the host is a bacteria, we use these two vectors. One is the plasmid and another is the bacteriophage. This is the virus that infects bacteria. These are the two vectors that we use in case of bacteria, if the bacteria is the host. Now if the host is a plant, then generally we use this plasmid, that is Ti plasmid. This plasmid is obtained from a bacteria known as Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Now if the host is an animal cell, so most cases we will use a retrovirus. So this retrovirus will then take this foreign gene into the cell, into the nucleus of the animal cell. Okay, now before using all of this, first of all their virulence, if they are virulent, if they are disease causing, then their disease causing capacity is first neutralized and then only this is used as a vector. For example, Ti plasmid, this is present in a bacteria called Agrobacterium and this causes a disease in plant called the gall disease. Now first of all, the disease causing capacity of this has to be removed. This is the virulence region which has to be removed, and then the foreign gene will be attached so that this cannot cause the disease, but it will deliver the foreign gene inside the plant cell. So this is how the vectors are used. These are the common vectors that are used. Now next is we have to cut the vector. So in this case we use endonuclease. Now this is the PCR product. From PCR we have got many copies of this foreign gene. Now in the vector also most probably we will use the same endonuclease which we have used to cut this foreign gene. But in vector we should use such type of endonuclease which will make only one cut, because if there is more than one cut then this vector will just break into many pieces. So we need an endonuclease which can cut in only one, or it has only one recognition site. So after it that these two are joined together, as you can see here, there the main enzyme used is the DNA ligase, and then this will now be inserted into the host cell. Okay, now how do we insert it into the host cell? Again, for different types of cells, different types of methods are used. Let us see the case in case if the host cell is a bacteria. So most common used process is the heat shock treatment. Okay, so here what happens is the normal bacterium cell is first treated with a divalent cation, for example calcium. For example, here calcium chloride treatment is given here. Then the bacterial cell and the plasmid containing the foreign gene, that is the recombinant DNA. So this is now the recombinant DNA. This is the recombinant DNA where we have used the foreign gene and we have joined it with the vector, so this becomes a recombinant DNA. Now this recombinant DNA and this bacteria which has been treated with calcium chloride, these two together are placed in a medium, and then this is put on ice, then at a 42 degrees centigrade, which is known as heat shock, and then again put on ice, and by this process this plasmid enters. As you can see here, the plasmid has entered the bacterial cell and this will be a transformed cell. That is, the recombinant DNA has entered the bacterial cell. In case of animal cells, micro injection, you can see a fine needle is used to insert the foreign gene or the recombinant DNA into the nucleus, the foreign gene into the nucleus. In case of plant cell, this process is known as the gene gun process. So here they are at a high velocity, this gold or tungsten particles, these are coated with DNA coated gold particles. As you can see, these are bombarded at a very high velocity, so that this will enter the plant cells. As you can see here, the gold particles will enter, and along with the gold particles, the DNA which is coated on the gold particles will also enter the plant cell. So this is done in case of plants. Okay, now whether the recombinant DNA has entered or not, how do we know? Whether there has been a transformation or not, how do we know? So for that we need some selectable markers, and mostly the antibiotic resistant genes are used as selectable markers. Okay, let us see an example here. So this is a plasmid PBR322, and it has two antibiotic resistant gene. One is the ampicillin resistant gene, another is tetracycline resistant gene. That means this bacteria which will contain this plasmid, it will be resistant to this both antibiotic, ampicillin and tetracycline. Now if we cut the tetracycline from the middle, the tetracycline gene from the middle, and we insert the foreign DNA here, this tetracycline resistant gene become inactive. So now this plasmid which will be inserted in a bacteria, that bacteria will be resistant to ampicillin but will not be resistant to tetracycline, because we have cut the tetracycline gene and we have inserted the foreign gene in the tetracycline, in between the tetracycline gene. Now after that we do this process which we call that, we use this plasmid, and we are not sure whether this cells has been transformed, that is whether this recombinant DNA has entered the bacterial cell or not. Okay, so how do we find out? Say for example, this is the transformed cell. You can see the recombinant DNA, has entered, and this is the non-transformed cell where it has not entered. Now when you grow this on a medium in which ampicillin is there, so what will happen is that because it has this plasmid which has ampicillin resistant gene, so this bacteria will be able to grow here, but the bacteria where this plasmid has not entered, so they do not have any ampicillin resistant gene, so here this bacteria, non-transformed cell, will not be able to grow because ampicillin resistant is not present here. So now what we see, this cells are growing in ampicillin resistant, that is ampicillin, in the ampicillin these cells are growing, that means these are ampicillin resistance. Now how do we know that whether the foreign gene is present or not? Because we have used tetracycline, we have inactivated the tetracycline. So we know that the plasmid has entered. Now we know that the plasmid, the recombinant DNA has entered. But how do we know that this one, the plasmid whether this plasmid has the foreign gene or not? So what we do, after we put it in ampicillin, we know that here the plasmid has entered the cell. Now we have to find out whether the foreign gene is not. Some of this can be again plated on a tetracycline. And then what we see, if the foreign gene has been inserted in between the tetracycline gene, that means this will be non-active. Now this bacteria which are growing in ampicillin will not grow in tetracycline if there is foreign gene attached to the vector. So this is the two conditions. First of all, first case we use ampicillin to find out whether this plasmid has entered into the cell or not. So we understand that this, when the colonies grow, we know that the plasmid has entered into the cell. And second case, if we use a tetracycline medium, we will know whether the insertion in the tetracycline region has taken place or not, and then we know that yes, then the foreign gene is present and there has been a recombination. Okay, now this ampicillin and tetracycline and plating, and it is quite a cumbersome process. First you have to put it in ampicillin, then you have to put it on tetracycline to find out. So there is another easy process, and here what is done is that the gene which codes for beta galactosidase is used to insert the foreign gene. So LAGZ is the gene that codes for the enzyme beta galactosidase. Now if we insert the foreign gene in between this gene, if we cut this gene and we insert the foreign gene, this gene becomes inactive. So what happens is, when this gene becomes inactive, the enzyme beta galactosidase is not formed. So now what is done is that we used a substance, a colored substance, along with this substract, because what is the function of beta galactosidase? Beta galactosidase, it breaks down glucose, breakdowns lactose into glucose and galactose. So with the lactose, if we attach a color substance, what will happen is, when the lactose will be broken down, this colored substance will also be broken down, and this will produce a blue color colony. So for example, if there is no insertion, for example here there has been no insertion, the gene is whole gene, as you can see the LAGZ gene is whole, and here the insertion has taken place, so this LAGZ gene has broken up, as you can see here, and between this gene, LAGZ gene, you can see this is the foreign DNA that has been inserted. So in the first case, the gene has become inactive, so no beta galactosidase enzyme is formed. In the second case, there has been no insertion, so the gene is intact, and therefore it will produce beta galactosidase. So in the first case, as the gene has become inactive, so no beta galactosidase is formed. So what is happening is that, as there is no beta galactosidase formed, that colored substance is also not being broken down. Lactose is also not being broken down, and the colored substance is also not broken down, and therefore it does not produce any color. You can see colorless colonies are formed here of bacteria. Now if there is no insert, then what will happen is that the beta galactosidase is formed, and when the beta galactosidase is formed, you can see here it is breaking down this colored substances and produces blue color. So you can see blue color colonies are formed. So you can see here, as you can see, white and blue color colonies. So white color colonies shows that transformation has taken place, that is they have the foreign gene, while blue color colonies show that transformation has not taken place, that is they do not have the foreign gene. So this is selectable markers, how these are used, and this process is known as insertional inactivation, because when we insert the foreign gene, the gene, this gene, that is the LAGZ gene, it becomes inactive and it does not produce the enzyme. So that is called insertional inactivation, and this is an easy process, because here by seeing the colonies, as you can see here, you know whether, you can see the color and you can tell whether transformation has taken place or not. Okay, now we have transformed, or we have put the foreign gene inside the host cell. Now we have to produce it in larger amounts, and that is done in large tanks which are known as bioreactors. So what are the main features of a bioreactors? First, as you can see here, in agitator system. So agitator system is basically to rotate or to mix this content, so that air can mix here into this culture medium where the bacteria or the host cells are growing. Then there are different types of sensors, then a tubes from which medium is put inside and the effluent is taken out. Then there are different monitors to find out whether the pH, the temperature is at the optimum level or not. So these are the different systems present. So there can be either simple stirrer like this, or it can be sparge stirred tank where bubbling is done so that extra or increased oxygen transfer takes place. Then increased area for oxygen transfer is also there in this case, as you can see here. So different systems are there so that optimum conditions are provided for the growth of the host cells, because for growth and multiplication of the host cells, so that the foreign gene is also multiplied. And finally, such conditions are provided so that this foreign gene can express, that means it can produce the particular protein, enzyme, whatever that is required, that will be used for commercial purpose. So finally, when that product is produced, then that is separated and purified through the process of downstream processing. So what happens in downstream processes? So if the product is intracellular, that is, it is produced inside the cell. So first the cell is broken down with the help of mechanical, physical, chemical, enzymatic actions, and then the product is removed. If it is extracellular, then this process is not required. Directly the product is removed, then it is isolated. Removal is done through centrifugation, filtration, sedimentation, etc. Then isolation is done through adsorption, evaporation, extraction, precipitations, etc. Then it is purified. Purification is done through chromatography, precipitation, membrane filtration, and finally finishing. Finishing is while this product is either crystallized or it is dried or sterilized, whichever process is required, and then we get the final product. Then this final product again undergoes clinical trials, and then this is ready for commercial produce. Okay, let us see some examples. Let us see first the example of a human gene that is being replicated, or that is being used for genetic engineering. Human growth hormone. This is a very important hormone for growth in case of humans. If there is a lack of this hormone, then it can lead to some specific diseases like dwarfism. If there is more hormone, then also there is a problem. But if a person lacks this hormone, then this hormone is produced with the help of biotechnology. Now this gene is isolated. Then this is the vector. This vector is cut, and this gene is also cut. As you can see, sticky ends are produced, and then this will be joined together with the help of ligase, and then this will be inserted into the bacteria, and as the bacteria multiply, this gene will also multiply and finally produce the human growth hormone. So this is an example of biotechnology. Now let us see an example in case of plants. Plants, as I told you, here the most common the plasmid used is the TI plasmid, and this belongs to this bacteria which is Agrobacterium tumefaciens. So here also this TI plasmid is isolated. This is the foreign gene that has to be inserted into the plant. So this gene is also isolated. Then this is inserted in this plasmid. This is joined with the plasmid, and then finally this plasmid is put inside the bacteria. As this bacteria infects the plant cells, this foreign gene is transferred into the nucleus of the plant cell, and you can get a recombinant plant. So these are some of the examples of recombinant DNA technology in case of animals and in case of plants. Thank you.